Some nights, the forest doesn't feel like the forest. It looks the same if you don't stare too long. Same trees, same road, same moon, pretending it's just passing by. But the air knows, the fog knows, and if you're paying attention, you know too. Joe Wanders walked that road the way he always did, slow, steady, like time had stopped asking him to hurry. His boots pressed into the damp gravel with a rhythm that never changed, a quiet metronome in a world that forgot how to keep time. The brim of his wide hat hid his eyes, as it always did. The long, weathered coat moved just enough to prove there was a body inside it. The pipe between his fingers glowed faintly, a small ember in a world that preferred the dark. His face stayed in shadow, not because the night demanded it, but because Joe allowed it. Beside him, leading by half a step, walked his dog, a white, muscular pit bull Labrador mix with droopy ears and a posture that always seemed to be listening to something no one else could hear. The dog's gait was confident, but cautious, loyal, but never careless. It had learned long before tonight that the world did not always behave like a world. The fog lay low over the road, thick enough to blur the edges of things, thin enough to pretend it wasn't hiding anything. It clung to the trees, curled around the trunks, and drifted across the path in slow, painterly strokes. The moonlight above filtered through it in pale gradients, turning the forest into a charcoal sketch of itself. Joe didn't speak. He rarely did these days. The dog didn't bark. It didn't need to. They had walked this stretch of road more times than either of them could count. Nights, when the world was quiet. Nights when the world was loud. Nights when the fog was just fog, and nights when it was something else. Tonight was one of the latter. It started small, the way these things always do. Not with a sound, not with a flash, but with a feeling. A subtle wrongness in the air, like a note held just a little too long in a song no one remembers learning. The dog felt it first. Its ears twitched, its head lifted, its paws slowed. The easy rhythm of its stride broke, replaced by a careful, deliberate placement of each step. The droopy ears angled forward, then back, then forward again, as if trying to triangulate a sound that hadn't yet decided to exist. Joe's pace didn't change, but his attention did. He didn't look around. He didn't tense. He didn't reach for anything. He simply noticed. The fog ahead of them began to vibrate, not enough to be seen at first, only enough to be sensed. The air thickened, like the world was inhaling and forgetting how to exhale. The dog stopped completely now, one paw lifted, body rigid, eyes fixed on the tree line to their right. The trees there flickered, not like a light turning on and off, more like a memory, trying to decide if it really happened. The trunks seemed to shift a fraction of an inch to the left, then back again. The branches bent, then straightened, then bent once more, as if the forest itself was buffering. The fog rippled in slow, concentric waves, as though something had dropped into it from above. The moonlight bent around those ripples, stretching and warping, turning the gentle gradients into twisted bands of light and shadow. Joe stopped behind his dog, his silhouette cutting a clean shape through the haze. The ember of his pipe glowed a little brighter, a tiny, stubborn star in the distortion. He tilted his head just slightly, as if listening to a voice only he could hear. The dog growled, low and uncertain, not a warning, not yet, more like a question. The forest did not answer. The vibration in the fog grew stronger, visible now as a subtle shiver in the air. The trees along the path seemed to lean inward, their trunks bending in ways Wood should not bend. The shadows beneath them stretched out across the ground, reaching toward Joe and the dog, like long, hesitant fingers. The road itself began to ripple. The gravel under Joe's boots shifted, not from weight, but from something deeper, like the ground was remembering. It wasn't supposed to be solid. The ripples moved outward from a point somewhere ahead, distorting the path, bending the lines of the world. Joe remained still. The dog did not. It took a step backward, then another, muscles tight, ears pinned, eyes wide. It did not run. It would never run, not while Joe stood there. But every part of its body screamed that something was wrong, that something was coming, that something was already here. The fog ahead of them twisted into a spiral, pulled toward an invisible center deep within the trees. The spiral tightened, drawing in more and more of the mist, until the forest beyond was almost clear, and the air around that center was almost empty. Then the empty space began to bend. Light curved around it, bending inward like it was being swallowed. The trunks of the nearest trees leaned toward it, their shapes stretched and distorted. The shadows on the ground slid across the earth, drawn toward that same point, as if gravity had quietly changed its mind. Joe watched. The dog trembled. The spiral of fog collapsed inward, and for a moment, there was nothing. No mist, no light, no sound, just a hole in the world, where something should have been. Then, the hole filled. A shape flickered into existence inside the distortion. Humanoid at first glance. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, a torso, but none of it stayed where it belonged. The limbs bent at angles that defied anatomy. The torso stretched and compressed, as if it couldn't decide how tall it wanted to be. The head twisted, features sliding across its surface, like wet paint. It was not a creature. It was a glitch. The fog wrapped around it like it was afraid to touch, curling and recoiling in slow, hesitant motions. The moonlight bent toward it, drawn in thin beams that warped and broke as they neared its form. Tiny fragments of light, like shattered pixels, floated off its body and drifted into the air, dissolving before they hit the ground. The dog's growl deepened, teeth bared now, body lowered, ready to spring or flee, unsure which would matter. Its eyes reflected the flickering shape, the glitching limbs, the impossible angles. It knew, in the way animals know storms before they arrive, that this was not a thing that belonged to its world. Joe did not move. His pipe ember glowed. His shadowed face remained unreadable. The entity, if that's what it could be called, stuttered in and out of coherence. One moment it was almost solid, almost human. The next, it was a smear of color and distortion, a suggestion of a body rather than a body itself. Its face tried to form eyes, a mouth, a nose, but each attempt slid apart, features drifting away from where they should have been. The forest around it bent inward, as if the world itself was leaning closer to see what had arrived. The trees curved, their trunks bowing toward the distortion. The shadows stretched, reaching for it. The fog spiraled around its torso, drawn into slow, orbiting rings. Then, without warning, the entity pulsed. There was no sound, no explosion, no crack, just a sudden, violent distortion in the air that rippled outward in a perfect circle. The fog was thrown back in a ring, blasted away from the center. The trees shuddered, their branches shaking as if struck by a wind that never touched the leaves. The dog staggered, paws sliding on the damp ground. Joe's coat rippled, but he did not step back. The pulse passed through them and kept going, fading into the distance, leaving the forest trembling in its wake. For a moment, everything seemed to hold still, as if waiting to see what would happen next. What happened next was collapse. The entity's body began to fold inward, its limbs curling toward its center, its torso compressing, its head sinking into its chest. The glitch fragments that had drifted off its form now reversed direction, snapping back toward it, pulled into the collapsing mass. The colors on its surface, those strange, painterly gradients, spiraled inward, tightening into a single point of light at its core. The more it folded, the brighter that point became, until the rest of its form was nothing but a dim outline around a blinding center. Then, the outline vanished. All that remained was the light. It hovered there, suspended in the air above the forest floor, a small, glowing ember, no larger than a stone, pulsing softly in the dark. The fog, which had been blasted away, now drifted back in, curling around the ember in cautious, swirling patterns. The forest was silent. The dog's growl faded into a low, uneasy whine. Its body relaxed by degrees, but its eyes never left the ember. It took a hesitant step forward, then stopped, as if some instinct deeper than fear told it not to get too close. Joe stepped forward. The ember pulsed once, brighter, as if acknowledging him. The light inside it swirled, shifting in slow, deliberate motions, like something inside was turning over, waking up, deciding. Symbols began to appear around it. They weren't letters, they weren't numbers, they weren't anything that belonged to any language the world had agreed upon. They were shapes made of light and glitch, drifting out from the ember and hanging in the air like weightless runes. They rotated slowly, forming a loose circle around the glowing core. Each symbol flickered, as if struggling to stay in this reality. Some stretched, some compressed, some split into two and then merged back into one. They were not meant to be seen by eyes like Joe's, or the dog's, or yours. But Joe watched them anyway. He had seen shapes like these before, not in the forest, not on the road, not in the waking world, in dreams. Dreams that came on nights when the fog pressed too close to his camp or cabin. Dreams that left him with the taste of static on his tongue and the feeling that something had been trying to speak through him, not to him. The dog lowered its head, ears drooping, body tense but no longer on the edge of flight. It sensed something ancient in those symbols, something older than the road, older than the trees, older than the moonlight that watched from above. The symbols spun faster, then slower, then faster again, as if searching for the right speed, the right rhythm, the right way to be understood. Then, one by one, they began to collapse back into the ember, folding into its surface like reflections being pulled into a mirror. The ember flared. For a brief moment, the forest was bathed in its light. The trees cast long, warped shadows. The fog glowed in soft gradients. The dog's white fur shimmered. Joe's silhouette cut a sharp, dark shape against the brightness. Then, the light dimmed. The ember shrank, contracting until it was no larger than a marble. It hovered there, quiet now, its pulse slower, its glow softer. The symbols were gone. The distortion was gone. The glitch was gone. But the world was not the same. The dog stepped closer, sniffing at the air around the ember, careful not to touch it. Its nose wrinkled, its ears twitched. It didn't growl this time. It didn't whine. It simply acknowledged. Joe raised his hand. He did it slowly, not out of fear, but out of respect. The ember drifted toward his palm, as if drawn by something it recognized. It hovered just above his skin for a heartbeat, then settled gently into his hand. The glow seeped into the lines of his palm, casting faint light across the shadowed planes of his face. For a moment, if you were close enough, you might think you saw his eyes beneath the brim of his hat. The forest exhaled. The fog, which had been holding itself in tight, cautious patterns, relaxed. It spread out again, filling the spaces between the trees, softening the edges of the world. The shadows returned to their natural lengths. The trunks straightened. The road remembered. It was just a road. The dog turned away from the clearing and began to walk, back toward the path, back toward the road, back toward the direction they had been heading before the world decided to bend. Joe followed. The ember glowed faintly in his hand, its light barely visible now, like a secret he wasn't ready to share. His pipe ember burned beside it, two small points of warmth in a night that had grown colder. Behind them, the place where the entity had appeared was empty. No scorch marks, no broken branches, no sign that anything had happened at all. But the forest remembered, the fog remembered, and so did Joe. Some nights, the world bends. Some nights, something pushes through. On those nights, most people stay inside. They close their doors. They draw their curtains. They pretend the fog is just weather. Joe wanders, keeps walking. He doesn't chase the strange. He doesn't run from it. He moves through it, the way a shadow moves through light, quietly, inevitably, leaving no footprints you can see. The dog walks ahead, ears low, nose to the air, always listening for the next wrong note in the song of the world. The road stretches on, the fog thickens, then thins. The moon drifts behind a cloud, then returns. Somewhere behind them, the forest settles back into its shape. Somewhere ahead of them, something else waits to be found. Joe doesn't know what the ember is. Not yet. He doesn't know why the symbols felt familiar. He doesn't know why he was chosen to carry this thing. Joe's not sure about anything anymore. He hadn't chewed on any funny mushrooms or sipped on any of his ceremonial forest tea for months. But he knows this. Tonight was not the first time the world bent, and it will not be the last. So he walks, and the dog walks, and the night watches, and somewhere, just beyond the edge of what most people are willing to see, the glitch watches back. But Joe, he knows, in his lowest, Joe has made a few friends in the highest, and though he walks through the shadow of the valley of death, he shall fear no evil. And as he walks away, with his guardian by his side, the forest and the rest of us listen as Joe quietly says to himself, "Holy shit. Heh, that's just Joe. God love him."
I've got one that can see.